ready to rumble once again in Friday night prime time, and we made our way to Oschersleben, a track infamous for commentators' hatred of turn number one. We'll see how these drivers get on in their GR86s in the butt kicker GR Cup. Welcome along one and all to RaceSpotTV once again as we continue our journey around the iRacing official series. Our Junior Kenki party joined alongside by Dara Thacker, and Dara, we look from up above at this facility. It's rather tight, it's rather twisty, and a track that I think plenty of our drivers won't have too much experience at.
No, it's not a track that we race at too often, but another track that I think can provide some interesting racing. We've had an interesting opening couple of rounds in this GR Cup, so, you know, following on from Brands Hatch and from Winton as well. Oschersleben, different challenge, but I think these guys will be up to it.
You can see there, look down the start, finish straight, what the drivers have in front of them. Let's take a look at the schedule though, because it continues the sort of trend of tight and twisty tracks before we really get to some of those faster facilities. Circuit Lebanon, Brands Hatch, Winton, Oschersleben, all to open up the first 4 rounds. And then after this, it's when draft is going to be even more important. We go to Interlagos and its mighty main straight, of course, Daytona, Road Atlanta, of course, as well. And then we'll get back to some of those tight and twisty tracks. It's a real mixed arrow that the drivers have got to balance.
Yeah, and it's an interesting little calendar because it kind of has that segment, isn't it, with the tight twisty tracks and then draft heavy tracks, then back to some tight tracks as well. So, and then ending, of course, at Mount Panorama, which is almost a bit of both. So, it's a fantastic little calendar. I think it really challenges the drivers, and we really see who the best drivers are on these Toyota GR cars.
Especially because it's fixed setup, so it's not like they have the ability to really dial in the car to suit them. They've got to just get to grips with what is a rather weighty and machine that bounces off of its suspension plenty as well. Now, drivers are out on track for qualifying, which sets them underway for the 20-odd cars that we have, I think, on the grid right now. At the top of the provisional time charts is Emmanuel Kurz. He finds himself almost 1/10 clear of those behind. Only 13 times on the board, and wait to see the rest of them flip on in. But interesting to see already that 5 drivers not going to get valid lap times on the board, it would seem.
That's not the ideal start, is it, to your evening, especially with only a short race of about 15 minutes or so. So you really want to be up as far up in front as you can on this grid so that you can try and get a good result, because when you're starting at the back, you're not going to have that much time to really recover for some of these guys. But it does look very tight at the top, doesn't it? I mean, second, third, and fourth, there's only a couple hundredths in it.
That's an interesting paint scheme from RaceSpot's own Stefan Schlacker, who's down in 14th right now. I did see that he had put into our internal little RaceSpot chat that, Oschersleben, GR86s, I might make an appearance. And there he is in the number 7 machine on his second time lap. And he will be, I think, the only driver left to actually try and set a benchmark. We jump on board as we run down the back straightaway in towards a... Can you call it a chicane? It's not really a chicane in many traditional senses. It's a distinct right into a distinct left. Watch as the car mounts the inside sausage curb and gets very, very light with the left front tire actually departing from the ground. Then 2 right-handers, pit exit off to the left, pit entry rather, off to the left. Not going to see drivers concern themselves with that, but Schlacker doesn't even get a time to run to the line, qualifying in the books.
Yeah, I mean, he nearly got that time on the board, but it was just about not enough. But you could really see the characteristics of this circuit where there aren't necessarily too many obvious braking zones, but still areas where you could make the move.
Well, I apparently forgot that qualifying had a timer on it, because, boy, that timer hit 0 right as I was getting excited to see what the time was going to be. We'll run down trackside, though, with the drivers ready for a full formation lap to get themselves underway. And remember, it's not a long race by any means. 15 minutes at most, maybe 10 laps for us to see them fight. The Hoonigan entry of Emmanuel Kurz with a 1:37.863 will lead us to the green, and then Toto Wolff is going to be hoping that Kaspers Sabalgo can run relatively close at the front and hold off the likes of Sekyun Ho and Connor Clifford from behind. Menno van Asten and Jonas Korberstein line up 5th and 6th positions, with 7th going the way of Darius Katiga. Augustin Munoz is on his outside, with Kevin Pion and Will Obenden outside of those front 4 starting rows. Samuel Jordan and Sam Drought, 11th and 12th positions. Remember, only 20 drivers, so this is really the heart of the pack. Roberto Calla, Stefan Schlacker, Alex Dunn. Final drivers with time on the board. And then Eric Kay, Hugh Barder, Phil Bradpott, and then at the very back of the field, it's going to be Rico Lammer and Adrian Chedinsky. That will take us at the very back with a charge from last to first. I read through the grid so quickly, they haven't even started flying on their flying formation lap, so plenty of time for them to get underway. But Dara, as they also build for this race, what do you think's going through the minds of those slightly further in the pack, especially those with no times on the board?
Yeah, I think they're going to be, trying to work out what's the best thing to do early on here to try and get the best launch, to try and get away in a way that might gain them a few spots, off of the start. They won't want to be making any stops in this race because that's really going to affect them as we run our way through. A few of the guys a little bit slower to get off the line for this formation lap, but I mean, the opportunities are there. This is a much wider circuit than we've had the last few weeks, so I think there are still going to be some opportunities for these guys to make the moves, but it's just going to be whether they can execute them in time, really, because 50 minutes isn't that long for these guys to get these done.
Sorry, I just recognized for the first time that we're not using the terrible turn 1. We're using the slightly less terrible turn 1. But that means that we can't get our commentators, whatever you want to call it, voices all tied up. Now, there's been drama down the back. I'm not quite sure how you can spin out on a formation lap, but through that gravel that very much tries to now suck you in here on iRacing, Phil Bradput finally rolls himself out.
Does. We'll have to see how he can get on. I mean, quite a strong field. Interesting, I think, is the technical term for some of the liveries that we've got, but it'll be easy to pick out some of the drivers as they make their way around this Oschersleben circuit. But it is a relatively long lap when you're sitting behind this pace car as you're getting ready for a formation, but you can really start to see where these drivers might be looking for moves. You're thinking about down into 3. You're thinking down into that 11-12, which is less of a chicane, more of an offset crossroads. So, yeah, we'll just have to see how these guys cope with that, and I think the opening lap's going to be really important here.
Yep, and I think getting through that start, especially since it's the faster turn number 1, going to be important to make sure that you stay out of trouble. Let's go back, though, very quickly, still as we head down into the final sector. Take a look at the replay on the right-hand side of your screen, and it's just a bit clumsy there. One driver going to the left, one driver going to the right, when they both should have probably been going slightly right, and hopefully no lasting damage in the Butt Kicker GR Cup, especially with these fixed setup cars. I wonder if that might have slightly knocked off one of the cambers of the car, potentially. Of course, these machines can be rather fragile if you knock them the wrong way. However, it can be physical racing as well, Dara, but it's a tight track. We're not expecting the draft to be too important. I'm quite intrigued to see where these drivers make the moves happen.
Yeah, it's very physical cars. You can get some really quite aggressive side-by-side action, but some fantastic racing all the way around circuits like here at Oschersleben. You're not really limited to those obvious braking zones, obvious overtaking points, so we might see quite a few moves being made all the way around this circuit, and there are going to be plenty of opportunities to do so, I think, but they're just about to get going because I believe this is now the penultimate corner.
See the pace car off to driver's left, and again, not going to be too concerned about that pit entry. It's going to be instead the 20 drivers all focused to the drop of the green flag, 15 minutes lying ahead, and maybe 10 laps of racing. Manuel Kurz was quickest in qualifying. He gets us racing as a check up behind. Look at them, 3, almost 4 wide at the very back of the field. Across the line though, 4 wide for sure. Your leader going to be already fanning off to the right to really throw the car into the opening corner. He'll lead in single file within the top 5 or so. Schlacker wide in his Hello Kitty entry as he runs his way back onto the racing surface. Drama in front of him as a couple of cars pirouette and knock off one another, but now as they go off into the grass, your lead is clear at the front of the field.
Yeah, the top 4 or 5 have really got away from the rest, and then there is just the pack in behind. You can see that gap as they're 2, 3 wide in that mid-pack, more contact, and there are more cars spinning around there at turn 3. You've got to be careful not to make any more contact, and they just about all make it through, but disaster for some of the guys off the start, the likes of Menno van Asten, Alex Dunn, Eric Kay having awful getaways, but fantastic for Manuel Kurz off the pole.
And it's another half spin. That time it's Augustin Munoz in the 16, and it may have caused a bit of a track blocker. It's a breakaway of 5 at the front right now. Darius Katiga and Will Ovenden are the ones that are fighting slightly further behind, and then you can see the separation that's just built already. I mean, that's a pretty wild opening lap. Going to take us a few little bites of the replay to figure that all out, but as they get ready to head down this back straightaway, again, right then left in a rather fast chicane, and you can see drivers trying to take opportunities. Connor Clifford was sitting behind Sek Yin Ho, didn't want to wait too much longer, and now as he forces one of those cars out wide, I believe that was Yin Ho, he's up to 3rd, and your leader's top 2 trying to break away at the end of the opening lap.
Yeah, and I think they're doing a relatively good job at that. You can see the gap opening slightly to Connor Clifford as they run their way through the final corner. The guys further back, the likes of Darius Katiga, they've been able to close back in a little bit with Will Ovington. But look at that at the back. I think that's Phil Bradpott and Samuel Jordan going wide at the final corner. Adrian Trzynski, he started this race from P20, 1 lap in, he's 11th.
Jonas Koberstein almost just ran into the back of Connor Clifford. Such was the eagerness to try and just close the margin and to build the buffer to those behind. You can see already Sekian Ho under fire from Katiga, whose orange and black car lazily, slowly jinks its way to the inside as they head up in towards a rather long left-hand sweeper that then carries you in through this middle half of the lap. Already you hear the klaxon go off, a handful of cars being forced to come down pit lane, but I wonder if for the two drivers up front right now, they get the bit of sense that they can break away from those behind if they don't squabble and leave their fighting for the end of the race.
Yeah, we're already seeing some relatively large gaps. Kevin Peon in P8 is 7 seconds ahead of the P11 man. So there are some large areas in this field where we're not going to see much action. But for these guys up front, there are some close racing, close quarters between some of these guys. And Manuel Kurtz is going to be very aware that Zab Aglo is going to be right in his slipstream, trying to find a way through anywhere around this circuit. And with lots of medium-length straights, I think there's going to be more than enough opportunities for Casper to try and make this move.
I love as well seeing, these drivers, the way they have to use the curb and really find the way to maximize the track. Let's go back to the start, take a look at the replay. Now remember, Schlacker had come in from wide on the start, but I don't think that's where it all kicks off. It's in front that already there was drama, but then behind, through all of that, you could see the likes of Alex Dunn getting turned on the nose of, I think it was Phil Bradpott and company, but slightly awkward, slightly uncomfortable, and well, didn't end there. You mentioned the incident as well for Mino Van Asten.
Yeah, down in towards turn 3 it was. You can see a couple of drivers being a little bit later on the brakes, and yeah, just seeing the number 10 car being turned around there, and so close to being hit by some of the other drivers coming through, but got off the racing line just before we saw Alex Dunn come through. But it was an action-packed opening lap, and it carried on, didn't it?
Yeah, actually, Stefan Schlacker, RaceSpot's own, may have tagged Augustin Munoz there, so we apologize to Augustin. And, I think that might have been Alex Dunn again that had a bit of an incident, unfortunately, as he came into shot. Not ideal by any means. We're all kicking off, by the way, on track. That's what happened to Connor Clifford. Mentioned that Koberstein had been close to him a handful of times. Got ran through in the opening corner, all as other drivers rejoin the track with almost 10 minutes left to go. Top two now with 1 second gap to those behind.
Yeah, we've not been short of action, have we, in the opening couple of laps here, and Manuel Kurtz has been very happy to stay out of it because Zabaglo is really now the only driver he's tagging along with him. Koberstein is looking like he's trying to attach a tow rope to the two in front, but he's struggling just to touch Sekian Ho a little bit too far back as well at the moment. So we're really kind of seeing the top two start to pull away, maybe pulling Koberstein, but that's really where the race is going to be at in the last 10 minutes.
And if I think this is what we were saying, right? If you are those top two drivers, it just takes one moment for drivers to be taken out of contention, for the gap to grow, and for things to really just change in the blink of an eye. Koberstein digs 2 of his left side tires into the gravel on the outside. Don't think that will hurt his momentum too much with the draft that he'll enjoy as well as they run their way up into the opening corner, but that's already 5 minutes complete. Lap times holding around 1:38 or so. On board, let's jump with Kevin Peon, sits in 7th spot. He runs in that train where you're trying to just find your opportunities to work your way forward.
Yeah, it's difficult through that opening part of the lap time because without the harsh braking zone, the 90-degree left-hander at turn 1, it's difficult to try and find a way through at turn 2, so you then have to try and set it up for 3. But as you can see there, the straight isn't particularly long enough to really gain too much in that slipstream. So Kevin Peon currently struggling a little bit on the back of Will Ovington at the moment. But, we've seen many little mistakes from some of these drivers, and there's nothing to say that it won't happen again.
See a comment, by the way, in the YouTube chat, what's wrong with turn number 1? I'm just saying, go search Oschersleben, turn 1 commentator. You'll see what we're talking about. And I will just admit, it's not necessarily the best design, turn 1 by default. The version that we're using is maybe just a little bit better. Now, Koberstein, is that slowdown? He's pulled driver's right-hand side and very, very slow down the back straightaway. He'll feed the position to Sekian Ho up into a podium spot. And now the margin to the top 2 grows even more.
It does, and so, it's looking even better for Kurtz and Zabaglo at the moment, and Sekian Ho will be very pleased to see himself up into P3 if he can hold himself there over the final half of the race, really. We're nearly halfway through already. It feels like it's flown by, but that's what happens in these short, snappy races. You've got to make sure you get the moves done. Can't make any mistakes early on, because it's really going to cost you. But if you can avoid the mistakes, you can really gain big by not really doing too much, and that's exactly what we're seeing the likes of Sekian Ho doing right now.
Look at that shot as well. There's the faster opening corner we have, and finally Zabaglo's just looking in the mirrors, showing himself. Toto Wolff would approve of that one. No Bose headsets being smashed today, as looks like Alex Dunn might officially be done for the day, as he, along with Menno van Asten, are seemingly confirmed as retired. Augustin Munoz and Rico Lammer are still out there, so might end up getting potential drivers out and just salvaging some positions in a short race like this, where you might just get a couple of I rating to add to your total. Right on board, though, as we see this battle for the lead. Zabaglo hasn't had a chance to really make a move just yet. Kurtz hasn't put a foot wrong until right there.
Yeah, it's gone a little bit too wide, but as they come into this little bit of a chicane, right, left, right again, it means that Kurtz can just about stay in front and try and build the momentum up down in towards the little chicane at 11 and 12. But very, very worrying moments there for Manuel Kurtz. We thought he might lose the lead, and even now Zabaglo looking to try and shape to the inside, but going to sit back into the slipstream and back onto the racing line, coming into 11 and 12. But all of this just allowing Sekian Ho to get ever closer to the top two.
Yeah, he's brought that gap down using the draft. It's really worked a treat now. There's another driver around, Kevin Pion, and I wonder if, once again, there's a bit of drama with another one of these Toyota GR86s. There is the lead, though. Look at how much Kurtz is pushing. He's feeling that pressure as we've passed half race distance. We're into the final half of this race. Outside for Zabaglo with not just Sekian Ho, but Koberstein closing as well. He will keep himself there and finally swap back and just continue trying to work, trying to get a nose underneath, and he'll do so through the long right-hander. Problem is, it leaves him on the outside for the next corner, a long left-hander. Will he get the opportunity to clear under the brakes? Remember, low momentum cars in many ways, so you're not going to get as much of an opportunity. Zabaglo's not going to get the lead. He's off into the grass for a moment. Kurtz holds on.
Yeah, and Toto Wolff won't like to see that as they now run in towards turn 4. It's the inside line for Kurtz. Can he hold it? Just about. But now look at Koberstein trying to find a move on Sekian Ho as they run their way through this triple left-hander. And none of them can do it so far. But now, all of a sudden, the top 5, and you can cover them with a blanket. They're all in each other's slipstream, nearly bump drafting down some of these straights. We've got a fantastic battle now, and it really could be any of them that comes out with a win in this race.
This is kind of what we were thinking we'd have for most of the season, if we're being honest, but we haven't necessarily had this type of action. After this, of course, a string of the bigger tracks where draft's going to be important. Looking forward to seeing how, of course, Interlagos next week's going to play out, although unfortunately I won't be there. Darrow will be. He'll be willing and able to enjoy all of that action instead. Let's see what happened to Kevin Pion, though, further down through the field.
And let's see. Oh, I think he just took a little bit too much. Well, either he took too much curb, and then and then we saw the drivers behind in the Hello Kitty car not really be able to brake in time. Let's see here. Oh, yeah, no, just losing the rear end, and then just gets a helping hand around. So not really anything that could be done there, but a nice little pirouette there from Kevin Pion. It meant that he was facing the right direction.
Yeah, and again, it goes to show, right? You can take the curb, but be careful how much you really do use it, because can find yourself in trouble. 5 minutes left. I mean, this is a great fight at the front. We got fights further back, though, too, as Adrian Chedinsky alongside Phil Bradpot. So one of those drivers, of course, that was involved in the incident on our formation lap, trying to work his way forward. Clearly hasn't done too much damage to the car. 5 positions gained. He's forward to 13th, and he'll get another spot. Forward to 12th as Sam Drought rejoins the track.
Yeah, not the ideal line, I think it's fair to say, from Sam Drought there, as we have battling further up at Sekian Ho, going for P2, and that's a spin. Oh, and Toto Wolff is absolutely going to be fuming with that one, because now Zabaglo's going to be out of contention, Ho's down to 4th, and all of a sudden, Darius Katiga, he's on the podium.
And it just can unfold like that, right? One moment where the cars are leaning on another, and you find yourself on the wrong line, and, well, Sekian Ho comes off at least relatively okay from that situation. Zabaglo down to 9th, and out of contention you would feel. Koberstein promoted to 2nd now, and the one to put the pressure on will be what? Next time by, with lap times hovering around 1 minute 40 or so, we should be into if you can tell, I'm very uncomfortable in making a prediction here. It's going to be 120 to go. 2 laps to go, 3 laps to go. It's something like that.
Well, if the leaders are lapping, so there should be 3 minutes 16 for 2 laps, and I think they just should cross in time, so I think it's going to be 3 more laps. Yeah, indeed. So we're going to have 3 more laps. Oh, it's in the background. You can see all out of shape as battle for P5. That's Hugh Barter getting out of line, and Will Ovenden trying to come through as well. But look at the battle for the lead. Koberstein coming for it. Cars 3 wide into zone 1. This is fantastic.
And it's Stefan Schlacker in the Hello Kitty car that's on the outside once again, and has to concede at the very least to Barter. Ovenden holds on the inside now as he tries to hold off the charge from behind. In fact, no, excuse me, Connor Clifford able in that black and orange machine to sequence his way forward as light flashed, universal sign of happy racing drivers. Definitely not true. Back up front though, I don't know if Manuel Kurtz is going to be too worried about Jonas Koberstein in the same way that he was worried about Zabaglo, because Koberstein has a fewer laps to try and make something happen. He's had another slowdown. 1.3 seconds, your margin for the leader.
Well, you were right in saying that I don't think Kurtz will be worried about him. He'll be even less now that he's in P4. Darius Katiga, I mean, Christmas has come, 8 months early for him at the moment because he's up into P2 without really making any proper overtakes on track. He's just kept his nose out of the trouble, and he finds himself in second trying to chase after Kurtz, but he's got to be careful because Sekien Ho, he's been on the offensive during this race, it's fair to say, and he might be looking to pick up P2 as well. But what a great race we've had. Only 30 minutes gone so far, but we have had an action enough for an hour.
An hour indeed. Let's go back over to what happened though up front, because, well, you can take a look on board with Koberstein, his perspective of the incident. It's in through a left-hander. What do you think?
Difficult, isn't it, really, because Ho was just running his line. I think it was just a bit of a wide line that was taken. Yeah, it's a difficult one. I really don't think there's much in it that either of them could have done. But it's unfortunate for both of them to lose a few spots, particularly for Zabaglo, who's now down in P9. But as we run down towards turn 1 again, penultimate time, it's all getting very close for P2.
Yep, again, we're on to the penultimate lap of the race. Stefan Schlacker behind Connor Clifford now as they swap around, but only momentarily. He gets back through, he's got the inside, and Clifford is escorted wide and almost into the grass. Up front, Sekien Ho up the inside with a lunge on Darius Katiga. That was coming out of nowhere in some regards. The orange car now looks as Koberstein tries to take advantage. All this allowing Manuel Kurtz to break the drafting range. He's 1.5 seconds clear as Koberstein and Katiga lean on one another.
Yeah, making their way through, showing that you can go side by side through this triple left-hander. Katiga's going to have the inside line to try and hold this one, which he will indeed, and just hold off Koberstein for just a little bit longer. But Koberstein will be looking maybe to make a move down into the 11-12. You could call it chicane, but the combination of corners down there, Sekien Ho looks, oh my word, he looks more comfortable, but that was a big moment.
It was Stefan Schlacker, it was Connor Clifford, the ones that was side by side, and now Will Ovenden trying to take advantage in his 13. I mean, this is the thing with this type of racing. One moment gives an opportunity to someone else to try and take advantage. We're going to head on to the final lap of the race, though. Again, still 1.4 seconds your race lead for Manuel Kurtz. It's the fight for the rest of the podium spots where I think there's some intrigue. Sekien Ho was 0.8 over Darius Katiga and Jonas Koberstein behind as they get ready to see the white flag here at Oschersleben.
Yeah, and you could see how much curb that Koberstein took there, I think, through turn 13. It was an almighty clump of curb, but now he's right on the back of Katiga. Down in towards turn 1. Is he going to try and make that inside move, stick a nose in, and try and be given the room? He's not going to have quite enough of the car in front to deserve any kind of racing room, and he will stick in P3. All of this fighting has allowed Hugh Barter to maybe look for a podium, and he started right down the field.
Again, 3 seconds back to the second grouping. All of these drivers going back and forth hasn't allowed those who are maybe fighting harder in some regards to close their margin. And I don't think there's many, takeaways we're going to draw from this race. Moving on over to the Super Formula lights that lie ahead of us here on Friday Night Primetime when we head to the streets of Montreal. But it's been great racing. Super Formula lights have had plenty of action as well. Half a lap still left to go. Definitely not going to be a fight up front. Don't think we're going to see a fight for third potentially either. I just wonder, Connor Clifford's been aggressive. He's got 4 more corners at most to make something happen.
Yeah, and he's got to make it happen soon if he's going to do so. But Schlacker is not going to let him through very easily as they run their way now on towards this, you could call back straight. Little bit of a moment, I think, there for Schlacker as Connor Clifford's right in the slipstream. Will Ovington is not having any of it at all, and he's staying firmly on the racing line as they come down into 11 and 12. And I think Schlacker's just going to hold on, but they are fighting it hard here.
And here around the outside, a moment for them. And I wonder what's happened to Hugh Barter, because up at the front, while Barter drops down the timing screen, Manuel Kurtz is going to slide his way to victory here at Oschersleben in the Butt Kicker GR Cup, and by a full second in a wild race to the end. Barney the flagman will see the checkered flag hold for Schlacker, Ovington and Clifford promoted to 5th. I think Hugh Barter, another driver caught out by an incident limit violation, but this time into the final couple of corners, heartbreak for him.
Yeah, and really, I mean, he was P17 to P5 at the time. It's up 12 positions in a 20-car field. A fantastic race up to the final couple of corners in the end. So unfortunate for him, but that's really, you know, you got to deal with it. Really, it's unfortunate, but there's nothing he can do. And a great race as well for Trzynski, who started 20th up to 11th. So some fantastic performances through the field.
We'll wait for just one more driver to get to the line before we finish up the race here and can actually grab a look at your final confirmed race results. But 20 started, only ending with 15 on the lead lap. I think it goes to tell you exactly how chaotic in some ways today's race ended up being. And I'm hoping over on when we head to Interlagos and moving forward after that, we might see a little bit more openness lead to some cleaner racing through the field. There is the final driver who will come towards the line. Grab a look at our race results, and then we'll be able to work our way on over to race 2 here on Friday night primetime. A full second at the front for Manuel Kurz from Sekyun Ho, and then Darius Katiga, Jonas Koberstein, and Stefan Schlacker make up the rest of the top 5. 9 positions gained there for RaceSpot's own Stefan Schlacker, but Will Ovington put some pressure on in the closing stages, as did Connor Clifford, Casper Sabaglo, Eric Kay, and then Phil Bradpott, the rest of your top 10. So big margins as well, of course, as we start to go down through the field, and those involved in the battles, Adrian Chadinsky, Sam Drought, and then Samuel Jordan, along with Augustin Munoz, scored on your lead lap. Hugh Barter does indeed drop down to 15th, along with Rico Lammer, while Kevin Pion, Roberto Calla, and then Alex Dunn, Menno van Asten round out the 20-car field. Here's a look at what lies ahead, though. As mentioned, we're off to Interlagos in a week's time, and then Sebring, Daytona, Long Beach, and Road Atlanta. Looks like a lot of fun for these drivers, and we start to open things up for them, Dara, as well. We'll get to see some very interesting racing.
Yeah, and if that was anything to go by, I think Interlagos is going to be an absolutely manic race. I mean, cars all over the road, wide track, overtaking opportunities galore, and it's going to be an incredibly exciting race as we move on from there. And Sebring as well looks fantastic.
Well, we have, of course, still got one race left to go here on RaceSpotTV. Don't go anywhere. It's Super Formulas Light at the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve coming up next.
There might be some rain coming through. We expect rain soon. Rain is close. The session has been declared wet. No sign of this rain stopping. Rain is clearing up. Rain should be gone for now. Nothing but sunshine all day.
From sunny Oschersleben to the rainy circuit Gilles Villeneuve. Welcome back to Friday Night Primetime, and this time to the iRacing Super Formula Light Fixed Series competition. These drivers have got to master the element, master the car, all without being able to dial it in for their own particular pleasure. Our junior Kanky Party joined alongside, as ever, by Dara Thacker as we get ready to go. And Dara, the rain is here, and it's meant some rather large gaps in qualifying, and I think it's going to mean some large gaps in the race as well.
Yes, the first time that we'll have seen rain in the Super Formula Lights cars on Friday Night Primetime this season, so this is going to be an interesting experience for us to see how these guys can cope, how the racing is like in these new cars, to try and see who can come out on top. But this looks like it's going to be an incredibly exciting session of racing.
Well, drivers have already just finished up the qualifying session. Our race at Oschersleben maybe ran a little bit longer than we were expecting. Let's take you down trackside. They're ready to go, and we'll be curious to see what tyre compounds they all elect to start on. They all qualified on the wet compound, and Chris Rosenkrantz able to master the conditions with a 1:45.24. Reginald Hamilton alongside, but 1 second off, and then Dimitri Yanis and Yaroslav Roth line up on the second row. Sunday, David De Haal and Elliot Court on the third row of the starting grid, with 7th going the way of Matthias Mink and Pablo Joglar alongside. Sebastian von Jaski and Jack Kent 9th and 10th, with Dylan Freckleton and Kevin Anfield 11th and 12th. Rolling through to hopefully not unlucky 13th for Stuart Wilson, Edgar Aranda alongside him, with Rico Schmidt, Andrew Petty, and then Marcus Sputniks and Jörn Stouthuizen rounding out the top 18 cars. Big field 23 lined up and ready to go. It's going to be Dion Santos, Heiko Junkas, Tony Dibiden, Andy Bootlin, and Romulo Gomez rounding out the 23 drivers ready to take to the grid. Can confirm as well that seems as though the majority, if not all the field, going to elect to start on the wet compound tire. It's a wet track even if the rain isn't falling.
Yeah, and I think even though we had a second one in the top 2, it was 3 thousandths between 3rd, 4th and 5th. So even though there might be some gaps, there are some parts of the track with some of these cars where there is absolutely nothing to split them.
I think you can kind of still see a bit of that moisture on the surface. It's going to be interesting to see how they also deal with the changing conditions, right? That's what really is going to end up playing a bit of a difference. It does look quite dark as well. Be curious to see if we are going to get any more showers and sprinkles of rain. 20 minutes. I think the drivers, Dara, are going to be basically locked into their tyre choice. We're not going to see them make a pit stop, make the switch over to dries.
No, I don't think we will, but you can never rule anything out. I mean, if this track dries incredibly fast, they might elect to try that kind of strategy, but I think it'd be a difficult one with only 20 minutes of the race.
Here we go. Lights will build, engines will rev. What will rain bring to Friday night primetime? The Super Formula Lights have made the trip to the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve and on the streets of Montreal. Let's get the action underway. Look at the spray though instantly. No rain, plenty of moisture though for those behind to contend with. Track position will be important. Already spins as you look through turn 1. Matthias Mink, the one that's gone around. Everyone else gingerly on the throttle. Edgar Aranda next around. Vonyaski's been tangled up as well. But down to that second chicane they will go. Your leader already building his advantage as Yaroslav Roth wide and a couple of cars into the grass.
I think because it's going to be difficult for some of these guys to really get their foot down early on in this race. Oh, is that? No, that's not a bit of rear-wing missing. That was just coming through the spray for, I think it was Elliot Court there as he goes very, very wide in towards the end of the opening sector. But difficult start for a lot of these guys, but a perfect launch from Rosenkrantz. 1.4 seconds already is the advantage, barely half a lap in.
And in some ways, I don't think Reginald Hamilton, will be too disappointed with this, because you'll actually have less of that spray to deal with. We jump on board with Pablo Joglar from his nose cam, and so this is going to be quite low down, right? So this is where the spray will probably be at its worst, but it's not easy, and you can see defensive lines being taken, but also the line where not as much water going to be on the track. We'll talk more about that as we build through this race itself, but dry line versus wet line going to be a big difference off the hairpin though. Nice and tidily, no one making a mistake.
Yeah, everyone seems to be all right on traction in these heavy traction zones, but I think it's these corners, particularly where we saw in turn 3, maybe 4 and 5, through that, you'd say, downhill little chicane, as much as you can get downhill on this island in Montreal. These guys bounce their way through the curves. It's going to be difficult to get on the power in some of the corners, but I think where they're flatter, straighter acceleration zones, they might have an easier job. Dion Santos making his way forward, Jack Kent slipping back, and I think there's a spin at the back.
Yeah, that's Vonyaski. That spun himself around. Not hit the wall of champions, though, from what I could tell. And I think our replay machine going to be quite busy on the opening lap trying to figure out who and all have slipped through the field. Left side will tell you plenty of stories. Vonyaski is minus 11. And Matthias Mink is down 15. A big move is Santos is plus 8 to his own name, but this is all still very, very tentative, very ginger in the mid-pack. Rain starting to drop once again, so it's only going to get more difficult, I think, in terms of conditions. It's now almost 3 and a bit seconds, the advantage for your race leader.
Yeah, an absolutely incredible launch from Chris Rosenkrantz. Really, it's going to be a case of, if he doesn't make a big mistake, how big is the gap going to be come the end of the field? Looking at some of the position changes there, incredible start from Dion Santos, up 9 places off the start, so fantastic for him. As we see, I think that's the spinner at the back, it is, and that's going to be Sunday. David De Haal, got to be careful not to go back onto the racing line there.
And I think that now gives an opportunity for those in front to make some moves, because Dimitri Yanis was looking under pressure. He makes another mistake deep at the hairpin. Yaroslav Roth, Pablo Joglar going to cycle on through, and I'm surprised, to be honest, that Dimitri Yanis doesn't get a slowdown penalty for going all the way wide and then getting a very, very good exit off the corner down onto this back straightaway. The spray, though, it looks remarkable. I mean, iRacing even increased the visibility with the spray after the initial release of rain, but it's very, very tricky. Yanis almost into the wall of champions. Here comes Joglar alongside, and he will surely work his way forward to fourth as a result.
Yeah, Yanis really not having a fantastic time yet. Can Joglar get this move done at turn 1? The inside line is his in that neon green car, and he will control it and get his way through down into turn 1 and 2. Of course, the UK drivers will have an added experience of driving in the spray as they do in the summer, but let's see if Yanis can get back up the inside. Some fantastic jockeying here for P4.
It's great. It's fantastic indeed, but it's all allowing those in front now to break away. Reginald Hamilton, I don't think he was too concerned about second, but Yaroslav Roth, the recipient of third, is now going to make his escape for the mountains, and 15 minutes still left to go. I think we have lots of unpredictability left in this particular race. We don't get a weather radar graphic just yet like the drivers can get in sim. That's something that we had as part of our coverage for the iRacing Sebring 12 hours, but it's definitely something where the drivers do have the ability to get a sense for when the rain's going to flow, but not how much it's going to flow. Where was there a mistake from Hamilton? Change for second, Roth on forward.
Yeah, Roth having a very good start to this race. Moving forward, 5 seconds off the lead, but if he doesn't make a mistake, he should be comfortable in trying to hold that position. I seem to remember at Sebring you were playing Weatherman, weren't you? Trying to show where the weather was going to go. Sadly, we can't recreate that this evening, but we do know that with this precipitation falling, only 15 minutes left of the race, even if it's stopped now, the track is certainly not going to dry. There is spray all over the road, and it's going to be difficult for these drivers to really see the cars in front.
And that camera shot doesn't give you a good angle of the puddling, but that is also a factor. The drivers are all having to, you mentioned some of the ways the track slopes. That is also where the track then will collect some of the water, and you'll have to avoid it. So, you know, all these different details and elements that are being introduced into the mix, and drivers still, of course, trying to get the most out of it. Let's go back to the start, though, because it all began with Matthias Minkin, the first little incident. Now, he touched some curb. Not a great idea at any time in the rain. Never a good idea, especially when you've got the tires still at low pressure. What happened, though, to Edgar Aranda out through the second part of this initial corner?
Yeah, let's see. Does he get a bit of a tap? Does he just lose the rear end? I think just losing the rear end on the acceleration there. Maybe got a bit of a tap in from behind in that Red Bull delivery Super Formula Lights car. But either way, it's just a slow speed incident. Another replay here coming down into this relatively fast right-left chicane in the dry at least, and dropping the car. I mean, it's so easy to do in some of these acceleration zones where you're trying to turn and accelerate at the same time. That
was Heiko Junkers that had his little spin, and then we mentioned that Sebastian Woniawski was parked definitely after not hitting the wall of champions on the inside. Now, did he get the car out of there? Because you can get beached on the curb, and yes, indeed he did, and quite cleverly avoided running into any of the cars that then were sliding his way on through. So well done. What happened to Hamilton, though? From second, just deep into the grass. Small mistake, big consequences.
And you don't want to start accelerating the car on that really wet grass. You'll find yourself facing the wrong direction into the oncoming traffic. So smart driving, really conservative to make sure he didn't lose too much time. There's a big slide out of the final chicane. I thought maybe he'd drop the car again, but luckily he sits in P3. Dimitri Yanis is back in P4 after his fight with Joglar, but I mean the gaps are really opening up. 6.5 seconds for Rosenkrantz in front.
It's a good gap, and it goes to show, I think, as well, that this is where the new skills are going to have to be developed. We have seen for so long the dry lines be run ad nauseum by drivers to the point where we make jokes, but a lot of them could probably drive it with their eyes closed. Now you definitely cannot do that. And you don't run on the racing line when it's wet, because the racing line, by virtue of having tires wear down the surface, actually has less marks in the track for it to flow through, and so that's where it actually pulls up a little bit worse. Whereas when the track's rougher off of the racing line, you get the flow, you get a little bit more of the grip that you therefore want to really make the most of these wet tires. There's no intermediates either, which I think in some ways, Dara, makes the decision as to when to cross over even simpler, because you're not worried about adding an extra compound into the mix.
Yeah, there's no consideration of, is it possibly dry enough for that intermediate, because it's so difficult to read in that scenario. It's still a wet tyre, so in that case it's just a percentage of wet, and that is so difficult to read sitting in the driver's seat. But when it's a wet to dry compound, you can just sit there and think, well, is it dry enough to go onto a slick? Clearly not, and they'll stay out on this wet compounded tyre. You can see the spray as well. Still, really kicking out so much water behind some of these drivers as they bounce over the curbs. Look at on the onboard here from Stuart Wilson. You can barely see the cars in front. I thought he was going to make a send to the final chicane there. Sits in behind, maybe trying to set up the move here on Elliott Court. But as it stands, sitting in P7, it wouldn't be a bad result for him just yet.
See the grooves on the tyre as well. That's where they are able to get the bit of purchase into the ground. See off the racing line. Using a lot of curb though. Be slightly unsettled by that. Can get very slick even now. The rain seems to have stopped and the sun is shining once again. It's so quick to change and so quick for you to have to adapt and to make those split-second decisions that will really figure things out. Side by side behind, this is Andrew Petty, Tony Dibden that are fighting around the outside for the 13. The long way around, off grip as well, given your off camber, and I think move will be made. Watch as Gomez, who started down the very back, already gained 10 positions so far, lurks and tries to pick up a couple more.
Yeah, and in a lovely old McLaren livery there, if he can try and pick his way through it, down in towards 6 and 7. Not going to be able to make a move here on Dibden, who is just trying to make the move on Andrew Petty. Went a little bit deep into 6. Won't have the line through 7. Through goes Dibden. Oh, is that a line maybe for Andrew Petty as well to come through? Let's see. Sorry, Romulo Gomez, I should say, to come through as they make their way down into 8 and 9. But it's oh so difficult and nearly heading into the back.
And it was almost contact because of the switchback at the very late notice. That's going to be a big slowdown for Petty to serve now as well, so watch him drop probably outside of the top 15 as a result, but you can see business picking up for the final spot inside of the top 10. Oh goodness, Pablo Joglar so convinced that he wants the inside into that final chicane. He forces his way on through, and Elliott Court will have to try and cut back underneath, get the run out of the final corner to make this move happen through turn 1, but you can park it on the exit, you can get a poor run and still block the car behind, and Joglar's bright green machine is forward to 5th position. Long rail around once more, but it's not going to work. All this in the fight for 5th.
It is. Has Joglar gone deep, though? I think he's gone a little bit deep on the brakes, and around the outside comes Court, but he doesn't quite have enough traction to make the move down in towards turn 3. Or turn 4, I should say. Stuart Wilson is just sitting in behind this little battle, maybe looking for the move on Elliott Court as they run in towards this chicane. Wolves are so close as you dip down the hill ever so slightly, but these three, fantastic battling, more than halfway through the race. I mean, a long way up to Dimitri Yanis. 6 seconds now up in front after Yanis got through on Joglar, but Elliott Court and Stuart Wilson, they won't be giving up on this P5.
Got some gaps to close though, and it's being helped though. These drivers lost 2 seconds to those behind, all in this fighting. Once more, they will fan out. Just try and find a little bit of reference marks as well. When you're in the spray, can be that much more difficult to try and figure out when you want to get onto the brakes as you find your way around this track, and I think that's where see the car behind just popping itself out increasingly, not just to get a different run and exit off the corner, but also making sure that it's making the most of the grip that it's got underneath. And we're into the final 8 minutes though. I think it will end up being 5 laps to go next time by. Definitely not going to worry about your leaders, not worried about the front 4 right now. It's all behind them. We're still close battling, not just for 5th, but 10th as well, side by side into the final corner. And once again, Elliott Court has to back out of it and try and set it up out of something else.
Yeah, I mean, he's trying to get that up and under through the final couple of corners, but he's not really getting enough traction through the first part of the chicane to make it worthwhile into the second part. So he's struggling down in towards turn 1. He's not going to make the move this time around, and time is ticking away. Less than 8 minutes to go now in this race as they make their way through 2 and now 3. But yeah, this is an interesting little battle. These guys really going at it quite hard, and it's the main battle in the top 10, really. No one else really having a big fight like these guys are. I mean, some of the gaps are quite large. You're looking at 11 seconds for the lead. That is not going to be bridgeable without a big mistake. Santosh to Dibden, 9th and 10th, 13 seconds there. So there are some really quite large gaps on this field.
Yeah, and you know, the big gap up front being 11 full seconds, it goes to show the 1 second advantage that Chris Rosenkrantz had in qualifying, definitely playing out in race pace as well. And a bit of something for us, I guess, to watch moving forward is if we get more rain in the future, could we see similar drivers have success? As Andrew Petty pointed in the wrong direction out of turn 3 and 4, and he's struggling to get it spun around on those Hankook tires. Finally does, but down in 18th.
Yeah, not the ideal race so far, I think it's fair to say. Of course, dropping all the way to the back, over a minute now off the lead, as we're going to see what happened there. Down in towards 4 and 5. Oh, yeah, spinning in the middle of the corner. A little bit of the tap to the car behind, but they just about get through. I think that's a McLaren Golf liveried car there, as you can just see, right on the middle of the corner, and then just a bit of an acceleration into the car, which isn't the ideal rejoin.
No, it's not. I feel like, being realistic, there wasn't much room on either side, and so it was always going to end, unfortunately, suboptimally. Back onto the fight, though, for 5th, as that spray slightly diminished since the rain has stopped, but really not being moved away. Joglar just a little bit wide out through the opening corner, but this doesn't really open him up to pressure from behind. Wilson, Freckleton, Santos, they've all just closed that little bit as we continue to work through, and you can tell that Court's feeling that he's got to find a way through soon, because he goes to the outside, shows himself once more. Because the racing line is so treacherous on braking, it's really forcing him to try and put the pressure on the entry to the braking zone. But even when Joglar is on what should be a compromised line, he's able to make it work. Rain starts sprinkling once again, though, as we head down onto the run into the second chicane.
Yeah, it was some April showers here at the circuit. Gilles Villeneuve, as they now go side by side. Are there going to be any moves to be made down into this chicane? No. It's going to be difficult for Elliott Court to get through. Maybe a run down in towards the hairpin, if he can try and just get a little bit of slipstream on the back of that neon green car of Joglar. Down in towards the hairpin. Going to have to be the outside line here for Court, but he hasn't really claimed it as his own. He's going to sit in behind, maybe get the acceleration through the hairpin, but at the moment, with these guys kind of battling away, just kind of holding each other up, more drivers are being dragged into this battle.
I think what he wants to try and do here is get to the inside on the exit of that second chicane, on the run up towards the hairpin, because that will give him the chance to force Joglar offline. You're not going to force him offline here, for example, as they head through all of that spray down into the final chicane, and it's looking treacherous as well. Some of the puddling that they do have to deal with at certain parts, but not necessarily down through that complex, all as the gap opens up even further to those in front. This is what we've been kind of waiting for when it came to rain as well, right, is how it was going to force drivers to drive under pressure. And a couple of spins on the opening lap with the tires coming up to their operating windows, but since then, drivers seemingly have made the most of the conditions, at least from what they feel underneath them.
Yeah, since the drivers have got a bit more used to these conditions, a bit more used to racing wheel to wheel, they've been able to keep it within the track limits, keep it on track, and keep it facing the right direction a little bit more. But look at this, Elliott Court is all over the back of Joglar here. He knows he's got a bit more pace in his car, but he just can't find his way through at the moment, showing that it can be really quite difficult to overtake in these Super Formula Lights cars, particularly in a wet, at a street track. So, you know, the odds are against him at the moment, but he is still trying maybe an outside line here into 8 and 9.
You see him weaving, and I think that shows, right? Just Joglar's placing his car exactly where he needs to be to not be passed. Stuart Wilson, he's got to have to make a decision sooner rather than later. Coming to what should be 3 to go next time by. Am I going to try and make this move happen? And am I going to force Elliott Court into a mistake, so I can also force something out of Joglar? Behind them, a little bit wide for Dion Santos. Meanwhile, 30 seconds up the road. Yes, 30 seconds is your race leader, Chris Rosenkrantz, who has come across the line once again. As I mentioned, because of his advantage, I do think, based on what I see in front of me, 3 laps left to run.
It's going to be close, though, I think. And I think if he backs off, it'll be 2 to go. He has that option because I think if Roth was the leader, we'd only have 2 more to go. So I think he has that buffer here, but we'll have to see how it goes. It's going to be tight either way. Joglar still defending here as they run in towards turn 1. Outside line now for Elliott Court, but has Joglar gone deep? He's missed the apex a touch, but he's got enough of the car in front and enough control to make sure that Court can't find his way through. And now Court really trying to get inventive. Outside line down into 4 and 5. This could be incredible.
That's a good exit, but again, he's still on the racing line, which is preferred in the dry, not preferred in the wet. He just needs to get to one of those lines where he'll have an advantage. What does Stuart Wilson think behind? Oh, Joglar's gone very defensive this time. You can see behind them, Freckleton and Santosh squabbling amongst each other. They've got lap traffic in front of them. That is not a car for position that they are closing on in all of that spray. I wonder what that's going to do to the mindset. If that car pulls to the side, it makes our life very easy, at least when it comes to the battling. Oh, Freckleton comes to blows with Santosh.
Yeah, down into towards 8 and 9. Not too sure what happened there. Maybe just a bit of contact on the entry to the corner. But regardless, as they have an incident, Elliott Court still trying to find his way through. I thought he might have had him around the outside at 8 and 9. But a good enough defense from Joglar to make sure that he stays in position. 1 minute 30 to go. And I think Rosenkrantz is trying to set purple lap time. So I think we will have 2 more to go. But this is some fantastic battling in behind for P5.
I mean, could you blame him? He's having fun in this wet conditions and clearly not struggling. Good. When you're in that sort of a rhythm, slowing down sometimes can be the worst thing for you. For a moment, it looked as though Elliott Court had the advantage into the final corner, but once again, the wrong line, doesn't want to force the issue in these conditions and has to back out of it. Great slingshot though, already back alongside into turn 1. This is great racecraft though, never really being willing to overcommit to the issue, willing to wait for the opportunity to present itself. Here's what happened behind them though in the battle for what at the time was 8th and 9th positions.
It still is the battle for 8th and 9th positions, even with the contact and just into the back there. It's, yeah, just a bit of a misjudgment, isn't it, really, on the brakes and getting into the back. Those two, they had such a gap back to Gomez behind. That's a massive crash.
Elliott Court got too tight, tried to turn in too early, had to back out of it, unwind the steering, and Stuart Wilson also tangled up. Dimitri Yanis, Pablo Joglar breathe a sigh of relief.
Word. It's so tight through there, isn't it? The tightest part of the racetrack down at turn 5, and it's so unfortunate that Court and Wilson now both limping around this circuit, barely able to control their cars, particularly. Oh, yeah, look at that. It is not looking like a healthy Super Formula Lights car. And Dion Santosh now going through as well. Santosh, mind you, he's now going to be up 12 positions in this race, a great race. And it's checkered flag, so somehow we thought we might get one more potentially, but Chris Rosenkrantz winning here in the wet. I mean, what dramatic racing that this really has brought to iRacing, the iRacing weather system, and a big margin at the very, very front of the field. We'll take a look at some of the replays. I have no doubt that we're going to be talking about moments like that plenty more on Friday Night Primetime on RaceSpotTV in the future. And here's a look with the onboard from Elliott Court. Yeah, let's see. Elliott Court trying to find an inside line into turn 5. Oh, either just gets the tap or loses the rear end. I think he might have just lost the rear end through turn 5. I think I think it'd probably be easy from Stuart Wilson's point of view. Yeah, just loses the rear end all by himself, and Wilson had absolutely nowhere to go. And that is the definition of being a passenger in a crash.
It's so unfortunate. They will come to the line 12th for Court. Wilson down in 17th. Although it might be a bit of a drag race between Elliott Court and Matthias Mink, as you can see just at the back of the shot. That's one driver taking a shortcut over the final chicane. Oh, you know what? It's probably a good thing that every race on iRacing doesn't have rain, because if every race was like this, we'd all age by about 50 years overnight.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that some of these guys won't be too pleased that it was raining in this race. Chris Rosenkrantz definitely was. A fantastic race from him, but it did create some very, very tense racing. Some lines which you don't normally see, and some overtake attempts that you, in the dry, you'd never see in a million years.
All drivers have crossed the line. We can grab a look at your race results. Chris Rosenkrantz, 15 seconds clear over Yaroslav Roth. And then Reginald Hamilton dropping down from 2nd, but holding on to the spot on the podium. Dimitri Yanis and then Pablo Joglar, 4th and 5th, with Dylan Freckleton and then Dion Santosh, who gained 12 spots up in 7th, but he wasn't the biggest mover. Oh no, that was Romulo Gomez from the very back, up to 8th, 15 positions gained for him. Tony Dibden in 9th in front of Jack Kent to round out your top 10. 11th went the way of Edgar Aranda after spinning on the opening lap. Matthias Mink, Elliott Court, and then Jürgen Stautheisen and Heiko Junkis, your top 15. Rico Schmidt, Andrew Petty, Sebastian Woniarski, and then Stuart Wilson, Andrew Bootland make up the rest of the top 20. And then those one lap down and not finishing. Marcus Pitnekis, Sunday, David DeHaal, and Kevin Anfield. 23 drivers that saw the green flag. it suddenly stops raining once again, and, well, it's raining on the other side of the track, so I guess you've got to keep an eye everywhere. And this is where unpredictability is what we were all thinking the rain would bring. And now, I'll be honest, I'm hoping we get a bit more rain here in the Super Formula Lights, especially maybe next week when we head to Mobility Resort Motegi.
Yes, some fantastic tracks on here that would be really quite interesting to see some rain. You're thinking even down in towards Algarve, Suzuka could be quite exciting, but next week at Motegi, surely a fantastic race. These Super Formula Lights should be going very nicely around there, and some great racing action between all of these guys.
And, of course, you can look forward to seeing that all here on RaceSpotTV in the future. It's going to be exciting as we head into this next era of rain on iRacing. I tell you, by the way, that Chris Rosenkrantz enjoying it so much that he's still out there pumping in some laps, and I think he's finally going to bring his race to a close. But on behalf of our team behind the scenes, for everyone at RaceSpotTV, thank you for joining us for yet another Friday night primetime. Can't wait to be back with more official iRacing competition in a week's time. But for now, for Dara Thacker alongside myself, Arjuna Kankipati, thank you for joining us, and boy, did today entertain. Oschersleben and Montreal, dry and wet, both very, very different types of races. See you next time.